Welcome to the Illini Nation pregame show live from Minneapolis. Bret, Beherns, and Jeremy Werner here at Huntington Bank Stadium. This is one of my favorites, Jeremy. It's like a really nice stadium here.
Yeah, it's a great aesthetic. It's got the mix of traditional with the brick kind of outlook. You can see the skyline of Minneapolis behind us as well, but it's still got that modern feel to it, built in 2009. So, yeah, kind of sneaky good. And
I like it.
Usually, though, it is bone-chillingly cold and wet around here. Remember Marley Werner and I 4 years ago, and 35 degrees and rain, but it's a beautiful day for football in November.
Perfect right now. The sun is out. I do fear when the sun goes down, it's going to get really, really cold. Temperatures upper 30s, I think, lower 40s right now. Not 2 years ago when we were here, temperature was like 60. It was perfect, and Illinois won that game. Start of a two-game winning streak against Minnesota after beating them last year in Champaign. Illinois going for 3 in a row over PJ Fleck's Row the Boat Gophers. But let's get to the big news right away here, Jeremy, and that is injuries. Illinois playing in its 9th game of the season, and the injury bug is certainly taking its toll. Reggie Love does not travel. Aiden Lawfrey does not travel. That means Illinois is going to see a whole lot of Caden Fagan and Nick Fidanzo, now the backup running back. Plus, we've also got Keith Randolph Jr. as questionable. It's getting tough here.
Yeah, this is it's usually a battle of attrition in football. You're seeing that in the NFL now, and of course college football. And it's the same for Minnesota. They are down to what was their 5th string back, ran for 200 yards last week. Walk-on Jordan Newman. They're maybe getting Zach Evans back, one of their top backups, so they're getting a little bit healthier. But Aiden Lawfrey, a little bit of a surprise, not able to go. We don't know what that injury is. They didn't specify that, but you're right. He did not travel. He's been playing sparing reps here. But Reggie Love not being healthy, I mean, that's been a loss for Illinois that we probably don't talk about enough because Caden Fagan has played so well. But to have that depth option, to have somebody else that can come in, pass protect in the backfield, give Caden Fagan a breather. But as you said, it's all Caden Fagan probably today. He's probably going to play a majority, super majority of the reps today because Nick Fidanzo was playing on the defense in spring ball. They had to move him to running back because of all the injuries they've had. So you're down Reggie Love, you're down Josh McCray, you're down Aiden Lawfrey, you're down Jordan Anderson. Those are your 4 top running backs coming in to the season. But Fagan, you think could be a workhorse. He's got to continue to do that today and stay healthy.
Yeah, and Illinois, they got to hope that he does stay healthy. If he goes out, it is not going to be good for the Illini. We'll see on Keith Randolph Jr. That would be big in the first half because, of course, Johnny Newton can't play in this first half. He's questionable. We saw him out here on the field. Look, I got the feeling he's going to play today. We'll see how that goes into warm-ups, but officially questionable. And if he can't go, then you're really counting on Bryce Barnes. You're counting on Ced McConnell there to kind of fill in until they get Johnny Newton back in the second half.
Yeah, if you could get Keith Randolph, even if it's 80% of Keith Randolph back, that would be massive for Illinois. But another guy we got to mention in that mix to help hold down the fort is Gabe Backus.
Absolutely.
Gabe Backus played really well on the defensive line. They moved him from outside linebacker to an interior position. And, Bret, I thought he played his best there. Gabe's a really strong guy at 6'3", 265. We know how strong he is on the edge. But I think his quickness for his size played even better on the interior because he's not the quickest or twitchiest edge rusher. But you put him on the interior, he's got a little bit of Johnny Newton quickness to him. So I think it's going to be big. He had his best game, I thought, of the season last 2 weeks ago against Wisconsin. So if you can get him and Keith Randolph with Denzel Daxter, who's played pretty well the last couple weeks at nose tackle, with Bryce Barnes, who's contributed nicely the last couple weeks, maybe you can hold down the fort. But you better bring your hard hats because this Minnesota offensive line is really good. They're really physical, and they love to run the football and control the clock.
Yeah, that's what I would be worried about. If Keith cannot go, now you've got a guy there that's played 1 game at defensive tackle in Gabe, and look, he's going to have like the best plan ever, right, in the offseason. Hey, gain 20, 25 pounds. Doesn't that sound like the dream? I don't know. Like
Terrence Jameson said we might put some stakes in him. I think there's going to be a battle there to see what Gabe Backus does. And even Brett Bielema, who last week said, he's still an outside linebacker. This week he said, he's got an interesting future ahead. I think he's going to be a defensive line because of what you saw. And another part of that is with those guys, if Gabe Backus, as we expect, plays defensive line, you got to have Seth Coleman, Alec Bryant, Ezekiel Holmes, who actually played pretty well against Wisconsin, finally healthy for Illinois. Those guys got to step up as well in that run game.
Yeah, that's something I'm going to be very, very interested in watching today, just to see how that plays out. How many snaps does Gabe Backus get at defensive tackle? Does he get any at outside linebacker? I'm going to guess no. A little bit of gamesmanship from Bret Bielema there, just saying, you might have to account for him at OLB. I'm not sure that's going to happen. And And if Illinois can try and control the trenches a little bit, like that's got to be, you said bring your hard hat and lunch pail, that's bring your oar. Like they've got to be able to match what Minnesota does physically. This is what PJ Fleck does. They run the ball. They've got a fourth, fifth string running back last week running for 200 yards. It's really incredible.
Yeah, PJ Fleck, whether you like him or not, whether you believe in the row the boat stuff and you don't like his personality, he's built a really good, consistent football program here. It's not pretty. Their win against Iowa was not pretty. Their win against Nebraska was not pretty, but it was a win nonetheless, both of those. And that's the difference between these two teams. They want to be the same identity. They want to be able to control the line of scrimmage. And the reason Illinois has won back-to-back games and has a chance to win 3 straight games over Minnesota for the first time since 1995 is because they have won in the trenches. 2 years ago, Minnesota ranked number 20 in the country, and they have a chance to win the Big Ten West title. Illinois comes up here, upsets them after a terrible loss to Rutgers because they won the trenches last year, won the game in the trenches despite Minnesota having Mo Ibrahim and being fantastic as a running back. So that's got to be the case. And I think there is a reason to believe, especially on the offensive line, Bret, because despite a loss against Wisconsin, your offensive line has played its best 2 games the last 2 weeks. You've been able to run the football with Caden Fagan, and a lot of that has to do with the offensive line just getting more physical, and you're starting to see more continuity up front. Zy Crisler at right guard has been good after struggling at right tackle early in the season. Isaiah Adams and Julian Pearl are playing their best ball of the year. And now can you get Josh Geske fully healthy, get him back at left guard, and finally get the group you thought you were going to have?
Yeah, and that for me is, okay, if Illinois would have played on the offensive line like they've been playing the last 2 weeks, Illinois is not 3-5.
Yes.
I mean, that to me is a huge storyline that however this season finishes, we're going to look back and go, it took until week 7 for the offensive line to fully gel to get somewhere where they could get some push, where they could pass protect a little bit better and give this team a chance to win. I mean, that to me is one of the biggest storylines this season, and they're going to have to bring it today.
Yeah, and on the other side of the ball on the defensive line, as we're talking about, just hold up, compete, and the offense keeping the ball away from Minnesota would help. But then second half, you get Johnny Newton back, and Minnesota's interior offensive line has some issues. So Johnny Newton getting in some one-on-ones against those guys, you think he can wreck some havoc, but you want to keep that game close going into the second half.
I remember 2 years ago when we were here, it was 14-0, I think in the second quarter, and Illinois just shut it down.
Yep.
Remember that? Yep. I mean, they controlled the clock. Yep. Minnesota got a late score on that end of the field. I remember that they had some life at the end there, but like that is like the script today, right? Can Illinois keep the ball in the first half for 15, 16, 17 minutes? If they do, they're going to give themselves a great chance.
And that's what both teams are trying to do.
Yeah, right.
PJ Fleck just wants to run the ball, run the clock down, and Bret Bielema wants to do the same. So the difference is PJ Fleck is in his 7th year, and they've been able to recruit a lot of depth to this program. And I think that has been a little bit of the difference of these teams being able to – the difference in their record right now of Minnesota having 5 wins and Illinois having 3 is Illinois had injury issues on the offensive line, at running back and some other areas, defensive back, and they haven't been able to really overcome those. Minnesota has. It's because he's had 7 years to recruit his program. Bret Bielema was still trying to fill some holes. Obviously, this offseason, they're going to have to address more of those, but I think that's been the difference. But I think Illinois' top end of talent, Bret, we can talk about the quarterback position, some other areas, might be a little bit better in Minnesota. They're going to have higher draft picks, but Minnesota's depth is better.
And Minnesota trying to get a couple of guys back today, especially at running back, how that factors into it as well. Look, Illinois is not the only team with injuries, right? Like how they get guys back, I think is important today too, if they do get their players back. And we'll see how that all measures. I would love if I'm an Illinois fan to try and get Ethan Caligmanis to throw, because I don't think he's a top half Big Ten quarterback. When he throws, I think they can have a chance to win. So we'll see how that plays out today, if they can force Minnesota to throw.
Yeah, Minnesota's passing game is not very good. Illinois has the advantage of quarterback today. But Ethan Caligmanis, kid from Antioch, Illinois, right next to the Wisconsin border, he's talented, but he's been really inconsistent with his ball placement. He's not the best athlete, but he does have one really good wide receiver in Daniel Jackson. He's one of the top wide receivers in the Big Ten, consistently gets open. But I do expect Illinois load that box up, try and make Ethan Caligmanis throw into really tight windows. He's going to make some to Daniel Jackson, but that's where you need Tavion Nicholson, Xavier Scott, those guys to step up. And, Bret, that's what I'm looking for. This secondary, I think we've seen the defensive front where it's Johnny Newton dominating against Wisconsin or Seth Coleman with 3 sacks against Maryland. I think we've seen the defensive front make plays. The linebackers are forcing fumbles, making some big plays. You got to get something from your secondary. A drop pick 6, the inability of Tyler Strain to get that interception on that play that really changed the game. Those are the plays this secondary's got to start to make. They need a game-changing play. I think this is the quarterback to do it against. And if you can do that in man coverage, I think that can be a really good thing for Illinois.
And in what we project to be a lower scoring game like this, those plays, even if it's just one, those takeaways can completely change the trajectory of a game if you can do that and put the ball back in the hands of your offense and see if they can sustain some drives. We've seen it time and time again, Jeremy, this season where a ball will go off a secondary player's hands and they're just not able to bring it in. Last year when they lead the nation in turnovers or takeaways, right?
Led in interceptions. This year they're last in the Big Ten in interceptions.
I mean, it's incredible how much that can change that, right? And that's simple football. Like, I get it. It sounds like, well, of course, when you take the ball away more. But,
and you lost some talent in the secondary, of course.
Doubt.
But there's been plays, and that's where, like, Xavier Scott is there. He makes the play, breaks on the ball, just reel that one in. That's the next step for him. Tavion Nicholson has a bunch of pass breakups, turn one of those into an interception. Tyler Strain, you got the pick sitting right there. Go attack the ball. Those are the plays they need to make.
Yeah, that Tyler Strain one at Wisconsin where he did high point that ball, man, that really, really hurt them and gave Wisconsin all the momentum it needed to get back into that game. Let's talk about the late half scenarios here, end of game scenarios. It's incredible, Jeremy, how much Illinois, I don't want to say crumbles, but it's like at the end of the first half and at the end of the game, Illinois does not play its best football. And I can't really sit here and explain like why that is necessarily, but the numbers are astounding on how many touchdowns and how many points Illinois has given up. 18-0 in the fourth quarter against Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Johnny Newton's dismissal from that game had something to do with the Wisconsin one, but the end of the first half, that changed the game, right? You're up 14-0, got a chance to go in with a huge lead, get the ball out of halftime, and Illinois is just not able to close. I think some of that was some zone coverage that Illinois ran, but then at the end of the game, you're blitzing. You're playing man coverage, and you're still not able to make the plays to close the game. And Aaron Henry was really upset about that when we finally got to talk to him on Monday, saying, listen, these guys are young, and they got to learn that the game is not over. You still got to go win it. 21-10 with 10 minutes left, that's an eternity for a Big Ten team. And obviously Illinois' offense was not able to make the plays to keep the ball, but the defense cannot give up 18 points in the fourth quarter. So they got to learn from that. So you hope they learn from that today. But also schematically, Aaron Henry's got to look at what they did and figure out, especially that end of the first half, like it's not really a great zone coverage team. And he went a little prevent there, and it really hurt him.
Yeah, I would expect him to be in man going forward in those kind of
especially
scenarios.
Against this team.
And this late in the season, right? I could kind of get it early on in the season. You're trying to feel out what guys are going to step up and who's going to be there. Look, at this point, you just are what you are, right? Like this is a huge part of what Illinois is. We asked questions for the first 6 weeks of the season. What is your identity, Illinois? Well, their identity is a 3-5 team. They just have not been able to make the plays. And this late in the season with 4 games remaining, that is who you are. So certainly I would expect them to stay man because that is truer to what their defensive identity is.
Well, and especially with Johnny Newton out. You can't count on pressure probably from 4 guys today. You're going to have to bring some pressure, create some pressure, whether that's all 5 defensive front guys or it's bringing your linebackers.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. I'm very, very interested to see if Illinois can hold up. Here's the deal, Jeremy. They've got 4 games left, right? They have to win 3 to get to a bowl. If they win out, certainly they're going to be sitting pretty and feeling good about it themselves. And I labeled it yesterday, November to remember, because they still have an opportunity, right? For as poor as this team has played, the schedule does allow it. Like, you don't look at Minnesota today, if you're sitting here and rooting for Illinois going, well, like, they're not that unbeatable, right? Vegas doesn't think that either. It's down to a 1.5 now, opened at 4. You host Indiana next week, which is one of the 2 winless Big Ten teams still, right? At least in Big Ten play. You go to Iowa, and look, even though Brian Ferentz has announced that he won't be back next season, maybe they air it out today. I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't care, but I doubt it, right? So, yes, an Iowa game is going to be really tough, and then you host Northwestern, and look, Northwestern, you probably wanted to play them in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Upstart Northwestern, I need to give a lot of credit to them for what they've been able to do and overcome after losing Pat Fitzgerald earlier this season. But it's like, okay, well, 3 out of 4 doesn't seem too bad, but you better win today. I think that's how I look at it.
Oh, absolutely. Because you could win all 4 of these games. Like the Illinois, the way they played the last 2 weeks, I know they lost to Wisconsin, but they played 7 of their best 8 quarters of football.
Yeah.
And I think even if you play 3 or 4 best quarters against any of these teams, you're going to have a chance to win. So if they play that way, they'll have a chance to win. But we've also seen this team is capable of losing to all of the teams left on their schedule. I think Bret Bielema said that before the year. All 12 teams on our schedule we can beat or we can lose to, and that has certainly proven out to be true. Indiana has been plucky lately. They're currently leading Wisconsin. They gave a game last week to, what was it, Ohio State?
Yeah.
So, like,
at least in the first half.
Yeah, first half. So, like, they're a little bit plucky. Northwestern's 2 wins from a bowl game.
Crazy, right?
Every time you count Northwestern out, they come back from the dead. But Illinois needs this game. That has been the focus. Bret Bielema has addressed. We have 4 games in front of us. We can still have a good season and end the season with some momentum, but it has to start today. It has to start today. They were not able to close it against Wisconsin. They were able to do it against Maryland. And for some reason, Bret, when they get on the road later in the season, when you're starting to count them out, Bret Bielema's teams have come out pretty well and played pretty well. So we'll see if they can do it today after an off week where they've had more time to prepare for Minnesota.
Yeah, and I look at this as such a confidence builder. If Illinois is able to come out here and get a win today, you lose this and now your back's against the wall. You have to win out to get to a bowl. And then you start to spiral. At least that's how I view it from a player's standpoint in a program. If you can't get to that 4 and 5 mark and you have to win, then you feel the pressure of, well, got to beat Indiana, and that's when you slip up. And how a difference it would make, Jeremy, in my eyes, if you were to win and get to 6-6 or 7-5, you feel really dang good about everything you overcome. At the same point, if they lose to Indiana or Northwestern here, 2 games where they, I think, will be favored, now your trajectory is even worse, right? And that is the recruiting disadvantage there, where I see that as like, whoa, okay, now in year 3, you got some really big negative vibes there.
Yeah, barring some crazy tie atop the Big Ten West, that is outside of the realm of possibility for this team, realistically. But you still have a bowl game to play for. You still have, getting your program a good look. Like, if you get to 7-5 or 6-6, I think most people from the outside will say, that's a solid season. Back-to-back bowl games, that's a good start for Bret Bielema. But if you don't get to that bowl game, you don't have those 15 extra practices, you can't sell that to recruits saying, yeah, we had a rough start, but we still found a way to get to a bowl game. That's where it gets hard. It gets hard to win in recruiting. It's hard to sell in recruiting. And then you got to get in the transfer portal. You got to go JUCO heavy, all those things. And those things still may happen, but just the perception of your program is so important in year 3.
Yes.
Right? Like, if this is year 1, people probably aren't all that concerned. It's going to take time to build it, right? But in year 3, you got to be producing. And for Bret Bielema, he's going to produce a first-round draft pick in Johnny Newton. That's nice. Maybe a couple offensive linemen can get drafted. But you got to win games, too, to sell those people and sell fans.
Absolutely. And I think that all hangs in the balance here because, if you get that back to the wall feeling, maybe that does spark them. But for me, it's this moment today where you have to start a month strong, where you've got, the last quarter of your season, your last third of your season, where you've got to go out and win games.
Oh, and speak for the staff, too. Listen, if they don't end this season well, there's going to be big questions about, do you have to make changes to your staff? But if they end it well, there can be no staff changes. Like that. I think there's a lot on the line here in November for Illinois, even if from the outside world, like, nobody's going to care nationally if Illinois is 5-7 or 7-5 or 6-6, but for Illinois it means a lot.
Yeah, I think that all hangs in the balance. We'll see how that plays out. And to me, the recruiting thing, I know you're all tied into, right? But it's like, hey, are you on decommit watch for some guys, right? And I think that all is important too, because if you get to year 4 next season and the Big Ten only gets tougher, Jeremy, it's not like it's getting any easier with the West gone. Then how do you go sell that? Like, I think that all is really fascinating to me, too.
Well, and a big thing for Illinois last year was they started beating teams that they recruit against. They beat Wisconsin, beat Nebraska, beat Minnesota. You lost to Nebraska, first-year coach. Lost to Purdue, first-year coach. Lost to Wisconsin, first-year coach. If you lose to Minnesota, it's hard to sell and win those recruiting battles head-to-head. But one thing I do want to bring up, quarterback. I think Illinois has the advantage. I think right now, if you had to pick a quarterback in the Big Ten West who is the best, I think Luke Altmaier would be that guy. So they need him to continue to get better and better. And we've seen him use his legs. He leads the Big Ten in scramble yards, taking out sacks, has more than 400 yards rushing. We can see that he's igniting their downfield passing attack a little bit, but he's also not making as many mistakes, Bret. Only one turnover the last 2 weeks has been huge for him, and that was a defensive pass interference. We all saw that one against Maryland. So I think that's huge too. Continue building around Luke Altmaier, continue getting better and better each week, because I do think he's playing as well as any quarterback in the Big Ten West, which that's obviously not a great group, but he needs to be an advantage today.
Is there a point where there's too much running with him? Because he goes down sometimes, and I'm here on the field, and I'm like, I don't know that he's going to get up.
I think he does a pretty good job of avoiding big hits. I'd rather him take those hits down the field, getting out of bounds, than what he's done with some of the sacks. Like, I'd rather those. But if teams are going to man up Illinois and they're going to bracket coverage Isaiah Williams, which I think is happening, he's going to have openings to run. And I thought that was a fine strategy for Illinois. If Wisconsin's not going to worry about the quarterback all that much, and Luke Altmaier can make guys miss when he gets in those one-on-ones, you got to be able to use his legs. It's one of the best tools they have. So I get it. You're worried about him getting injured at some point, but it's also one of the best weapons they have on offense, and it makes their running game that much more dynamic. Yeah, and that running game is going to be really important today for Illinois with all the injuries. We mentioned, if you're just hopping on, we've got no Lawfrey today. We'll see. We've got no Reggie Love. We'll see a lot of Caden Fagan. And if Luke can run, and I feel really good about that. What would be a good yardage total, you think, if Caden and Luke could run for 150? Yeah. I feel really good about that, yeah? Yeah, because especially in the first half, if you can control the clock, limit Minnesota's possessions of going against Johnny Newton, without Johnny Newton, I think that'll be really important for this team. But yeah, 150-plus yards, that's a good day for Illinois, and you feel like that'll open up things in the passing game as well. Pat Bryant's had some flashes the last couple of weeks, need more consistency out of him, but they do have to get Isaiah Williams more involved. Yeah. He only had 4 catches the last game for 16 yards. It was a season low for scrimmage yards, 24. His last 3 games, teams are really focusing on him, so they got to find a way to get him involved, whether it's screen passes, touching the ball behind the line of scrimmage, but really you like to get him downfield because he's really improved as a downfield threat this year. No doubt about it. We'll see if one can get his hands on the ball, certainly more than last game, where they, I thought, did a really nice job of containing him. All right, we'll wrap it up here on the Illini Nation pregame show live from Minneapolis. Well, okay, I always ask you because I find your preseason predictions fascinating for what you had to where we're at. Way off this year. Way off. But it's fascinating because it just shows to me how much we thought of this team going into the season and then how different it's been. And that's why you play the games. That's why it's fun. So what did you have preseason for this one? Do you remember? I had Illinois, I believe, winning this game because I thought Minnesota was replacing a lot. I had big questions about their quarterback, replacing a lot on the offensive line. But kudos to their offensive line. It's been a strength of theirs. Absolutely. But Illinois hasn't. And I think that's been the biggest difference of these two teams is Minnesota has maintained a strong offensive line while Illinois' offensive line struggled for most of the year. But you're starting to see that offensive line take a step forward the last couple of weeks. So I think that's been really, really encouraging. But I still don't think Minnesota's a great team. No, if I'm picking a team to win the Big Ten West, I don't know who it is, but I don't feel like Minnesota is that team. So I think Illinois is going to have a chance to win. Okay, so you pick Illinois preseason. What'd you pick this week? I think Illinois, we can't lose sight that 7 of the last 8 quarters for Illinois have been really good. No doubt. They've been really good. And I think Vegas is telling us something. It's open at 4 points. It's down to 1.5. That means they think this is a complete toss-up game. Correct. It might as well be a pick-up. I mean, really, if this was a neutral field, Illinois might be favored. I think so. Right? Because 3 points usually for the home team. So I sided with Illinois winning late. I think they're going to stick in this game, be down at halftime by a field goal or a touchdown. But I believe in Luke Altmaier, and I think Johnny Newton's going to wreak havoc in the second half. I think that guy's going to come out fired up. Hopefully not too fired up. But I think Minnesota is going to have a beast in the middle to handle. I have Illinois winning 21-20. I don't know how I can pick Illinois after what I've seen this year, but I'm looking at the last 2 games. I just think they've played well. I think Illinois got the higher ceiling of these teams, but Minnesota has been more consistent. I don't know if it's going to get to 20, to be honest. I mean, what was that? No wind. I know, it is beautiful. I'm almost warm in this coat. Like, imagine that. The breeze is not too bad. Like, how about that in Minneapolis? Not even needing a coat in November. All right, look, what was the Iowa-Minnesota game? Was 12-10? 12-10. Like, I think this is going to be ugly, dude. Illinois' defense is not as good as Iowa's defense. Absolutely, sure. And I would imagine Illinois' offense is better than Iowa's offense, right? So I think that's also true. I think this one's going to have a few more points than that. I'm going to pick – I've gone back and forth. Like, I feel like
this whole season, Jeremy, we've sat here and been like, I don't know, like which Illinois team is going to play. Like,
by the way, that's Keith Randolph running on the
there
field.
You go.
He looks like he's ready to go.
I think he's going to play.
He's bouncing around.
Yeah, he's bouncing. We don't know his injury either, right?
It's lower leg.
Yeah.
I would guess an ankle, but that's pure speculation.
Yeah.
They have not specified.
And that's been 3 or 4 weeks. He's been battling that and kind of questionable. All right, we're off on a tangent here, but we're getting back to I don't know, we think we know this team, right, and what it is. The 7 of 8 quarters is interesting to me as you sit here and try and pick a winner. I do think the road thing is very interesting too. They've proved that at Maryland, right? Even back to Bielema's first season on the road at Penn State, they win
Minnesota.
Here at Minnesota,
Wisconsin last year.
Man, I'm okay.
This is basically our prediction.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna pick 17-16. What the heck? I'll take Illinois.
Hey,
come on. 1-point win for both of us.
Don't say we're not homers.
Jeez, I don't even know, man. This could be a 24-10 game or something, and we'd both be like,
yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
For either team.
Right, that's what I mean, right? I don't really have a sit here in a
It's
the
Big Ten West, man. I was talking with Ryan Beherns, who covers Minnesota, and he goes, who is the 4th best team in the Big Ten? And I said, Iowa?
Oh, I think Iowa might be the best. I still have Iowa winning the West because they hold the tiebreaker over Wisconsin.
Wisconsin's
but they don't have
losing
the
Indiana
tiebreaker
right
over
now.
Minnesota.
If Minnesota wins this, they have a chance, but they got to beat Wisconsin, got to beat Iowa for their chance to do it. Heck, Nebraska is still in the running.
Nebraska's I think they are the team right now that
it's dark horse team to win the Big Ten West.
Yes.
And you know how they're doing it? They're playing ugly. Yes. They just Matt Rule, unlike Scott Frost, goes just play ugly, and you got a chance to win in the Big Ten West.
And that's going to be the fascinating thing for me. We get too far on a tangent here. How does that play out next season with these West Coast schools coming in who do not play ugly, want to score high points and all of that? I'm just very fascinated about that.
Yeah, I think they're going to have a
rude
awakening.
Oh, I think so.
I think obviously Washington's very talented. USC's very talented. Oregon, I think, is the team most well-equipped to make the transition. I mean, UCLA's defense has played really well. So the talent obviously is going to be important, but yeah, for those teams it's going to be important. But they still play each other,
right?
They only play 2 of those West Coast teams.
Give me the USC Iowa matchup, or the Iowa defense trying to hold them to whatever.
What is this?
Oh, dude, it's going to be fantastic. We'll enjoy that next year. All right, we're both picking Illinois. Apparently, we're both homers. I don't know. Row the boat. Did you check out the oars back?
I saw PJ's oar collection.
It's quite
row the boat, ski Umag, go Gophers.
Jeez.
I said that way too slow.
You got to go way faster than that. And I love Bielema this week too, Jay, saying that when PJ texts him that he puts row the boat in there.
That makes sense.
It does. I just find it hilarious.
But kudos to him. I mean, what he's built here at Minnesota, it's what Illinois is striving for. Consistency, getting to bowl games every year, basically, and finding a way to be competitive in the Big Ten. Listen, I know Illinois fans, like Lauren Tate's always saying, they have no chance to win the Big Ten or national championship. That's a different conversation. There's only about 8 teams that can just talk about national championships. Get to a consistency where you're having fun every Saturday, watching games, and you have a chance to go to a bowl game every year. That's what Illinois is striving for, and it's why today is an important game.
All right. For Jeremy, I'm Bret. You guys got plenty on the site, too. Hey, it's crossover season, too.
That's right.
We're talking basketball.
2 basketball games this week. Woo. 3 in 7-8 days, and then we got another football game.
Let's go. I'm looking forward to it all. We'll be right back here on these same digital channels after the game to hear from that Coach Bret Bielema live. Post-game, we'll see if Illinois can do it. We're both picking Illinois. We have no idea. Good luck to everyone watching, and enjoy the game. 2:30 kickoff on Big Ten Network. For Jeremy, I'm Bret. Thanks so much for